The air in the hallway is thick, silent and cold, like waiting inside a tomb. I stand behind a shoulder I don't recognize, a dark suit, the lawyer's silent guardian. Across the threshold, a woman's face collapses, her eyes wide with something that might be fear or just confusion. Behind her, the sound of shouting erupts. His voice. David. He pushes past her, his face crimson, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" he bellows, his voice echoing in the narrow space. "You can't do this. Get out." The man in the suit, my lawyer, holds up a document. His voice is quiet, steady, utterly devoid of emotion. "Mr. Carter, we have a court order. This property is being seized." Seized. The word hangs in the air, heavy and final. It lands on David like a physical blow. He stumbles back, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out now. The woman behind him whimpers. She clutches a silk robe closed, her hair messy, sleep-rumpled. The scent of expensive coffee drifts from inside the apartment. A normal Saturday morning, shattered. My gaze drifts past David, past the whimpering woman, into the space David bought. Bought with my name. My future. The living room is bright, modern, exactly what he described wanting for us someday, a place with clean lines and big windows. Now it belongs to a ghost. Or rather, it belongs to the consequences of his choices. He recovers, lunging forward. You did this." His eyes lock onto mine over the lawyer's shoulder. They aren't just angry. They hold a raw, exposed panic I've never seen before. He looks like an animal caught in a trap it didn't even know existed. "This is insane. You'll regret this." My lawyer raises a hand, a simple gesture that stops David cold. "Any further interaction should go through legal counsel, Mr. Carter." But David isn't looking at him. He's looking at me. And for the first time, I don't flinch. I meet his gaze. There is no warmth, no recognition of the woman he promised to cherish. Only the raw, ugly truth of what he is, laid bare in the harsh light of this hallway. The woman starts crying, a soft, hopeless sound. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It started, like most things do, with something small. A feeling. A tiny grain of sand irritating the smooth shell of my life. We had a good life, David and I. Or what I thought was a good life. A comfortable house in the suburbs, built on years of saving, planning, dreaming together. Weekend trips, quiet nights on the couch, shared laughter over mundane things. We were building something stone by stone. That's what I believed. My world was simple enough. I worked as a graphic designer. Nothing glamorous, but steady, creative, fulfilling. David was in finance. He handled the investments, the retirement funds, the mortgage payments. He was good with numbers, confident, seemed entirely in control of our financial future. I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. The man who held my hand when my father passed, the man who celebrated my small victories, the man who knew my worst fears and promised to protect me from them. Our biggest dream was simple, maybe even cliché. A little piece of land somewhere quiet, a small cottage, a place to breathe when the city felt too tight. We'd look at real estate websites sometimes, fantasize about renovations, paint colors, the view from the porch. It was our shared horizon, the future we were building towards, brick by brick, loan payment by loan payment. There were no flashing red lights. No dramatic arguments about infidelity. Just that feeling. A subtle shift in the air between us. He was working late more often. His phone was suddenly a fortress, face down on tables, password protected, buzzing with notifications he dismissed with a casual, just work stuff. He was less present when he was home, his mind miles away, scrolling through screens, a distant look in his eyes. I told myself it was stress from his job, a big deal coming up, the usual pressures of providing. I was understanding, supportive. That's what wives do, right? We weather the storms together. I didn't know I was already adrift. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. The mail arrived, a stack of junk mail, bills, magazines. Tucked in the middle was an envelope addressed to me. From a bank I didn't bank with. Not our usual one. I frowned, confused. Opened it. It was a statement. A credit card statement. In my name. With charges I didn't recognize. Big charges. Furniture stores, electronics, even some kind of architectural consulting fee. The balance, it made my stomach drop. It wasn't just a few $100s. It was thousands. Tens of thousands. My first thought wasn't betrayal. It was identity theft. Panic clawed at my throat. I immediately thought of calling the bank, the police. But then I saw the account details. It wasn't just my name. It was my name, our address, his phone number listed as the primary contact. And the date the account was opened, just a few months ago, right around the time the late night started. I stood there, the flimsy paper trembling in my hand, the blood draining from my face. Identity theft felt too simple, too external. This felt internal, sickeningly personal. When David came home that night, I tried to be calm, tried to approach it logically. David, I started, my voice shaky, holding out the statement. Can you explain this? There's a credit card here in my name, but I didn't open it. He glanced at it, his expression shifting in a way I couldn't quite read. A flicker of something, surprise? Annoyance? Before settling into his usual easygoing facade. Oh yeah, that. Sorry, honey, I meant to tell you he took the statement a little too quickly. Just a little something I set up. Needed a separate card for some business expenses that are getting reimbursed later. Used your name to make it easier with the bank since you're on our main accounts anyway. Didn't want to clutter up the joint statements. I'll pay it off next month when the money comes through. He said it so smoothly, so casually, like forgetting to pick up milk. My initial panic about identity theft began to recede, replaced by a different, colder anxiety. Easier with the bank? Using my name without asking? For business expenses that looked an awful lot like furnishing an apartment? The feeling in my gut screamed. This wasn't right. I pushed him. Business expenses? Furniture? David, what kind of business expenses are these? This doesn't make sense. He sighed, a put-upon sound. Look, it's complicated financial stuff. Tax write-offs, leverage, you wouldn't understand. It's all legit, I promise. Just trust me. I'll handle it. Don't worry your pretty head about it. Don't worry my pretty head. The dismissiveness, the casual wave of his hand, felt like a slap. It wasn't just the money anymore. It was the condescension, the assumption that I was too simple to grasp his complex world, the effortless way he lied. Because I knew, deep down, that he was lying. The charges weren't business expenses. They were for something else entirely. Something secret. Something he was hiding from me. Over the next few weeks, the cracks widened. I started digging, quietly, secretly. It felt dirty, invasive, like violating a sacred boundary. But the alternative, living with that gnawing uncertainty, felt worse. I checked joint account statements more closely. Found transfers I didn't recognize. Large sums moved to accounts I didn't know about. More bills arrived, small ones at first, then larger ones, utility bills, maintenance fees, all addressed to me, but for an address across town. An apartment building. A specific unit number. My blood turned to ice. An apartment. Not business expenses. An apartment. Bought or rented. Furnished with a credit card in my name. And whose apartment was it? The answer slammed into me like a physical force. It wasn't an abstract concept anymore. It was a name. A woman's name. Found buried deep in his phone records. A contact saved under a code name I stumbled upon by accident. A name that appeared in emails, quickly deleted. A name that the utility bills were connected to. Her name was Sarah. The realization hit me in waves. Not just the affair. That alone would have been devastating, but this was more. He hadn't just cheated. He had used me. He had risked my financial security, possibly ruined my credit, all to fund his double life, to build a sanctuary for himself and another woman. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had tried to break my future. I tried to confront him again, armed with this new, horrifying knowledge. I showed him the utility bill, Sarah's name staring up from the paper. His easy facade shattered. The mask fell away, revealing something ugly and desperate. He didn't deny it this time. He couldn't. Instead, he became defensive, aggressive. "You were snooping," he roared, turning the tables. "How dare you go through my things? Don't you trust me?" Trust. The word tasted like ash. "Trust you," I whispered, my voice raw. "You opened accounts in my name without telling me. You used my credit to fund this apartment. For her. How can I possibly trust you?" The argument escalated, spiraling into a maelstrom of accusations and venom. He admitted to the affair, but framed it as my fault. I wasn't attentive enough, not exciting enough. I had let myself go. Foul, cutting words designed to wound, to make me feel like the problem. And the money? Oh, that was just practical. An investment. He needed the privacy. The apartment was a secure place for their relationship. He actually said that. A secure place, like it was a business venture, not a betrayal of everything we were. He spun a web of lies about the loans, claiming they were temporary, easily manageable, that I was overreacting. He painted me as hysterical, jealous, irrational. He twisted reality until I felt dizzy, unsure of what was up and what was down. He was a master manipulator, and I, blinded by years of love and trust, had been an easy mark. I felt trapped. The financial implications were terrifying. The loans were significant. My name was on them. If he defaulted, it would destroy my credit, my ability to buy anything, even rent an apartment if I left him. He held the keys to my financial future, and he had proven he couldn't be trusted. Leaving him felt like jumping off a cliff into financial ruin. Staying felt like suffocating in a house built on lies, watching him continue his life with another woman, funded by my own name. My early struggles were pathetic. I tried to reason with him. I begged him to be honest, to fix the financial mess he'd created. I even, shamefully, asked him to end the affair, thinking perhaps we could salvage something. He offered empty promises, half-truths, more manipulation. He'd say he was sorry, then immediately pivot back to blaming me. He'd promise to sort out the money, then conveniently forget. It was psychological warfare, wearing me down, making me doubt my own sanity. I started seeing the financial statements, the loan documents, not just as paper, but as physical manifestations of his betrayal, poisonous tendrils wrapping around my life. The numbers weren't just figures. They represented years of my work, my trust, my sacrificed dreams, now funneled into another woman's life. The rising challenges felt insurmountable. The loans weren't small. They were substantial. A mortgage on the apartment, a line of credit, credit cards maxed out. All in my name, or joint names with clauses that made me liable. My lawyer, when I finally got the courage to see one, explained the grim reality. Divorce was one path, but recovering the money, proving he fraudulently obtained it using my name, especially if he argued it was a joint investment I implicitly approved of, which he was already starting to hint at, would be incredibly difficult and expensive. He could drag it through the courts for years, draining our joint assets and, by extension, my assets, with legal fees. Meanwhile, those loans were accruing interest, damaging my credit score with every late or minimum payment he made, or didn't make. And Sarah, the mistress. Was she a willing participant in the financial fraud? Or was she just another victim, unknowingly living in a place bought with stolen funds? I didn't know. And frankly, at that point, I didn't much care. She represented his betrayal, the physical location where my stolen future resided. David grew bolder. He stopped pretending to be discreet. He'd stay out all night, sometimes not even bothering with an excuse. He knew I knew, and the knowledge seemed to empower him, perversely. He'd sometimes leave his phone out, open, as if daring me to look, yet simultaneously warning me not to. The house felt haunted by his absence, by the weight of his deceit when he was present. The financial situation worsened. Missed payments started appearing on my credit report. Calls from creditors. My perfect credit score, a source of quiet pride, plummeted. The carefully constructed foundation of my financial life was crumbling. I felt physically ill, the stress manifesting as sleepless nights, constant headaches, a knot of anxiety permanently lodged in my chest. Everything I had worked for, everything I had planned for, was being systematically dismantled by the man I had loved and trusted more than anyone. It felt like he wasn't just having an affair, he was robbing me blind, atom by atom. I remembered the dreams of the little cottage, the land. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, my future looked like bankruptcy, a shattered reputation, and the crushing weight of debt I didn't create, but was legally bound to. I was losing everything: my husband, my home, my financial security, my dignity. The first lawyer I saw was kind but cautious. He spoke of mediation, negotiation, the lengthy process of discovery in divorce court. He laid out the standard options, none of which felt like justice. Getting half of what was left after the debt was paid off still meant starting over in a deep financial hole. It meant letting David walk away relatively unscathed, leaving me to clean up his mess. It felt like being a bystander in my own ruin. The pain was a constant companion, a dull ache that sometimes flared into sharp, unbearable agony. I'd look at David, sitting across from me at the dinner table, on the rare nights he was home, and see a stranger. A thief wearing my husband's face. The intimacy was gone, replaced by a vast, cold chasm of betrayal. The man I loved was dead. This creature inhabiting his skin was something monstrous. One night, he came home late, smelling of perfume I didn't wear, humming a tune I didn't recognize. He seemed happy, relaxed, utterly oblivious or uncaring of the devastation he had wrought in our home, in my life. He chatted about his day, a meaningless stream of office gossip and trivial complaints, as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't systematically dismantled my world. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was colder, harder. A switch flipped. I looked at him, this man who had weaponized my trust, who saw me only as a tool for his convenience and deceit, and I knew I couldn't let him win. I couldn't just survive this. I had to fight back. Not just for the money, but for myself. For the woman he had tried to erase. That was the midpoint shift. The realization that I was not a victim waiting for crumbs from his table. I was a person with agency, with rights, with a fierce, burning need for justice. The standard legal path felt like damage control. I needed something more. Something that would acknowledge the depth of the betrayal, something that would hit him where it hurt, something that would reclaim what he had stolen, not just financially, but emotionally. I found a different lawyer, recommended by a friend of a friend, described as a shark, but the best kind. His office wasn't plush. It was efficient, no nonsense. He listened patiently as I laid out the whole sordid story. The loans, the apartment address, Sarah's name, David's gaslighting and manipulation. When I finished, the lawyer, Mr. Sterling, didn't offer platitudes. He leaned forward, his expression sharp, assessing. "This is messy," he said, "but not impossible. Standard divorce proceedings will be painful and likely won't recover everything cleanly. But there might be another angle." He started talking about fraudulent transfers, equitable liens, piercing the veil of deceit. Legal terms I barely understood, but the feeling behind them resonated. He proposed a more aggressive strategy, targeting the asset bought with the fraudulently obtained funds, the apartment. He explained the risks. It would be contentious. David would fight it tooth and nail. Sarah might become involved. It wasn't a guaranteed win, and it would be expensive. It was a direct assault, not just on David's finances, but on his carefully constructed double life. It would expose him, publicly or semi-publicly, depending on how hard he fought. The deepening crisis was realizing just how difficult this would be. David was already hiding assets, complicating the financial picture. He started making veiled threats, warning me against doing anything stupid, reminding me how much power he held over my financial life. The legal process, even this aggressive version, was slow, requiring meticulous documentation, filings, waiting. Every day felt like a battle against time, against David's continued deceit, against the mounting debt. There were moments of crushing doubt. What if I lost? What if this backfired, and I was left with nothing but legal bills and a mountain of his debt? What if he somehow twisted the narrative enough to convince a judge I was complicit, or simply mistaken? The stress was immense. My health suffered. Friends offered support, but nobody could truly understand the knot of financial and emotional terror that consumed me. I felt utterly alone, navigating a dark, treacherous sea. David seemed to sense I was planning something, though he didn't know what. He became more erratic, alternating between attempts at charm and icy threats. He wanted to regain control, to push me back into the box of the naive, trusting wife. But that box was gone, shattered by his own actions. Mr. Sterling became my lifeline. He was calm, strategic, relentless. He didn't get emotionally involved, which was exactly what I needed. He saw the case clearly, focusing on the paper trail, the undeniable facts of the fraudulent loans and the asset they purchased. He explained each step, preparing me for the fight ahead. He warned me it would be ugly. The turning point came when David delivered an ultimatum. Sitting across the kitchen table, the same table where we'd once planned our future, he told me he would agree to a divorce, but on his terms. He would take responsibility for some of the debt, but I would be liable for the rest. He would keep the majority of our liquid assets, claiming they were essential for his business ventures, code for his life with Sarah. And he added with a smirk, he would fight me for the house, claiming I couldn't afford to maintain it on my own. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration of war, meant to cripple me, to leave me dependent on his generosity. Looking at him, hearing the callous disregard in his voice, the sheer entitlement, I felt a cold calm settle over me. There was no trace of the man I had loved, only an enemy. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I won't agree to that." He laughed, a short, sharp bark. "You don't have a choice. You're in debt up to your eyeballs because of this. You have nothing." "I have the truth," I said. "And I have a lawyer." His smirk faltered slightly. "What are you talking about? You think you can fight me? You'll lose everything." "Maybe," I said, standing up. "But I won't go down quietly. And I won't go down alone." That was the moment. The decision was made. I would pursue the aggressive strategy. I would go after the apartment. I would expose him. The fear was still there, a low hum beneath my resolve, but it was overshadowed by a potent mix of anger and a cold, hard determination. He wanted a fight? I would give him one. And I wouldn't be playing by his rules anymore. Working with Mr. Sterling was like learning a new language, a language of evidence, statutes, leverage. We meticulously gathered everything: the loan documents with my name, the statements, the utility bills for the apartment addressed to me, the money transfers, even veiled emails between David and Sarah that hinted at the apartment purchase. It was a mountain of paper, each sheet a testament to his betrayal. The plan was complex, relying on proving that the loans were taken out under false pretenses, exploiting my trust and name, and that the funds were directly traceable to the purchase and furnishing of the apartment. If we could convince a judge of the fraudulent nature of the transaction, we could petition the court to place an equitable lien on the property, essentially making it collateral for the debt he created in my name. The ultimate goal was a forced sale of the property to cover the debts. It was audacious, and it required perfect timing and execution. The waiting was agony. Filing the initial petitions, gathering the final pieces of evidence, waiting for the court dates, the approvals. David's lawyer responded with predictable bluster, trying to paint our actions as malicious, a desperate attempt to seize an asset that wasn't rightfully mine. They tried to argue I was fully aware of the loans, that they were joint investments. Lies built upon lies. But Mr. Sterling was prepared. He had anticipated their arguments, armed himself with the irrefutable documentation. The paper trail didn't lie. My signature was on the loan documents, yes, but the circumstances under which they were obtained, the concealment, the use of the funds for a secret life, it all built a compelling case for fraud. The final stage involved securing the court order to seize the property. This wasn't a simple eviction. It was a legal process to take possession of the asset, pending further court orders regarding its sale. It was a powerful, public statement that his actions had consequences. And it required sheriffs, locksmiths, and an element of surprise. Mr. Sterling advised me not to be present for the initial filing, but I insisted on being there for the execution of the order. I needed to see it, not out of petty revenge, though a part of me craved that, but because I needed to witness the unraveling of the lie he had built with my life. I needed to see the physical manifestation of his deceit brought down. So, on that cold morning, I stood in the hallway, a silent observer. The air was heavy, not just with the cold, but with the tension of the moment. The sheriff stood ready, professional and impassive. Mr. Sterling held the court order like a shield. And, behind the door, two people were beginning their normal Saturday. The knock. The door opening. The look on Sarah's face, confused, then fearful. David pushing past her, his initial bluster turning to rage, then pure, unadulterated panic as Mr. Sterling spoke the word, seized. His eyes found mine. The raw, blindsided look on his face was something I will never forget. He hadn't anticipated this. He had thought I would roll over, settle for a pittance, disappear quietly with the mess he'd made. He had calculated the costs of his affair, factored in the risks, but he had never imagined this. He had underestimated me. He had underestimated the power of the truth, backed by the law. His shouts faded into the background as the sheriffs began their work, efficiently, calmly, like professionals performing a routine task. Locks were changed. Notices posted. The apartment, the symbol of his deceit, was no longer his. It wasn't mine either, not really. It was in legal limbo, an asset earmarked to correct a wrong. Sarah stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, pulling the silk robe tighter around her. She looked lost, bewildered. Another casualty of his lies, perhaps. Or maybe she knew. I didn't know her story, and in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. My focus was on him. David stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and fury. His kingdom of lies was crumbling around him. The secure place he had built was being taken away, piece by piece, because he had built it on stolen ground. The victory wasn't sweet, not entirely. It was cold. Satisfying, yes, in a deep, bone-weary way. But standing there, watching the collapse of his carefully constructed world, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly. The sheer relief of knowing I wouldn't be buried under his debt, that he wouldn't get away with it cleanly. But also, a profound sadness. Sadness for the life we should have had, for the years I had wasted trusting a man who wasn't real, for the painful process of dismantling a shared history. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal procedures. The apartment was appraised, put up for judicial sale. The proceeds went directly towards paying down the fraudulent loans in my name. It didn't cover everything, but it covered a significant portion, enough to make the remaining debt manageable, something I could realistically pay off over time without facing bankruptcy. David was left reeling. The public nature of the seizure, though limited to those involved in the transaction, and the building residents who witnessed the spectacle, was a humiliation. His carefully guarded double life was exposed, not by me confronting Sarah, but by the cold, impersonal hand of the law. He faced questions at work, from friends, from family. His reputation, something he valued immensely, was damaged. He tried to retaliate legally, of course, but our case was solid. Mr. Sterling deflected his lawyer's attempts to delay or obfuscate. The evidence of the fraudulent loans and the traceable funds was too strong. David ended up being legally liable for the remainder of the loans not covered by the apartment sale, as well as significant legal fees, both his and a portion of mine. It wasn't a clean break. The divorce was finalized months later, a sterile exchange of documents that formally ended our marriage. There were no dramatic courtroom confrontations, just the quiet, final judgment that dissolved our union and allocated the remaining assets and debts. He kept some investments, I kept the house, though I had to refinance to afford it, adding another layer of financial stress. I never spoke to Sarah directly. I learned later, through whispers and legal filings, that she claimed she had no idea the apartment was bought with funds obtained under my name. Whether that was true or not, I'll never know. Part of me hopes it is. Part of me hopes she suffered some consequence too. But ultimately, she wasn't the target. He was. The lessons learned were etched into my bones. Trust, once broken, is irreparable. The signs were there, small at first, but I had chosen to ignore them, to believe the narrative he presented because it was easier, less painful, than confronting the truth. My financial independence, something I had taken for granted within the safety of marriage, became paramount. I pored over my own finances, learned everything I could about debt, credit, investments. I took back control of my own money, vowing never again to cede that power to anyone. The emotional scars remain. The betrayal went deeper than the financial fraud. It was a betrayal of partnership, of love, of the shared future we had built. The image of his face in that hallway, the raw shock and fear, still surfaces sometimes. It's a reminder of what he did, and what I became because of it. Stronger, yes. More resilient. But also colder, more guarded. The house feels different now. Quieter. It's no longer our house, it's my house. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, slowly erasing the ghosts of the past. The dreams of the little cottage on the land are still there, but they're mine now, independent of anyone else's promises or plans. Sometimes I think about David. I hear fragmented stories through mutual acquaintances. His career suffered, his reputation took a hit, his relationship with Sarah didn't last. Karma, perhaps, but a hollow kind. My victory wasn't about destroying him, it was about saving myself. The quiet satisfaction I feel now is different from the cold vindication of that day. It's a deeper, more rooted feeling. The feeling of having weathered a storm that threatened to capsize my entire life and emerging, battered but afloat. The debts are slowly shrinking. My credit score is slowly climbing. The future I'm building is slower, harder than the one I'd imagined, but it's mine. Every brick is laid with my own hands, on ground I know is solid. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.